Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining. We'll begin in just a couple of minutes, just waiting for everybody to get in before we start. All right. Shall we begin then, ma'am and sir? All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 E-Summit. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Uttara Krishnakumar.
And my name is Aditya Mohapatra.
And we will be your hosts for this morning's panel discussion. The E-Summit is an event organized by Saksham. Saksham is the entrepreneurship club at IIMU with a vision to foster the spirit of entrepreneurship in the student community and in the society at large by enabling the translation of ideas into successful ventures. The annual E-Summit is a platform which helps students to interact with successful entrepreneurs personally and get inspired by their words. Saksham organized the first ever E-Summit at IIM Udaipur in 2020, where we were able to host successful entrepreneurs who shared their inspirational journeys and ignited a spark amongst the students to consider entrepreneurship as a career path. And this year is absolutely no different. We are so honored to be joined by three incredible speakers, entrepreneurs, and mentors, Mr. Murali, Sivaraman, Ms. Mythily, Ramesh, and Ms. Prachi, Mohapatra. I'd like to introduce our speakers before we get started. First up, we have Mr. Murali Sivaraman. Mr. Murali Sivaraman has 30 years of experience, of which 20 were spent in CEO roles in a number of organizations, varying from global to regional. He is currently an independent director with ICICI Lombard General Insurance Company Limited, Bharat Forge Limited, chairman and independent director at Hutamaki PPL Limited, private equity advisor, director SVP Philanthropy Foundation, advisor Hamilton Housewares Private Limited, and he was also until recently president for Philips Lighting Growth Markets, who served 25 countries across Asia, Middle East, and Africa. In previous roles, he has led the global appliance business for Philips with marketing, innovation, and supply sites around the world. Murali sir has previously been in CEO roles handling country leadership in China, India, Canada, and ASEAN, where his domain of business was predominantly branded products and services with a strong consumer and B2B, B2G engagement, as well as large M&A and JV execution integration in India, China, and the Middle East. Welcome, sir. We're extremely excited to gain your valuable perspectives here today.
Thank you. Thank you, Uttara. What a pleasure. Thank you.
So our next panelist is Ms. Mythily Ramesh. Ms. Mythily Ramesh has 30 years of experience in her career. She completed her BE Computer Science from College of Engineering, Guindy, and MBA from IIM, Ahmedabad. In her 20 years successful stint in Wipro, she grew from a customer support executive to a senior vice president. Her career spans product management, marketing, business head, and quality. As a certified black belt, she drove the Six Sigma initiative in Wipro. With a passion for entrepreneurship, she was the CEO of a startup in Wipro called 01 Markets and built a successful business around e-procurement and was a pioneer in reverse auctions in India. She then moved to the corporate office to handle mergers and acquisitions, business development, and innovation. In 2010, she and a few ex-Wipro colleagues started a social entrepreneurship firm, NextWealth, focusing on delivering AI ML services from small towns. She is currently the co-founder and CEO of NextWealth. In 2006 and 7, she was adjudged one of the 25 most powerful women in India by India Today and DataQuest. She serves on the board of Karnataka Bank, Indian Institute of Management, Udaipur, WEP Solutions Limited, and WEP Digital as an independent director, and is a steering committee member of Impact, an NGO started by IIMA alumni focusing on educating the underprivileged girl child in India. Welcome, ma'am. We are looking forward to learning from you through the course of this discussion.
Thank you, Aditya, and namaskaram to everybody on this call.
And finally, we are joined by Ms. Prachi Mohapatra. With 17 years of experience in product management and marketing, Ms. Prachi Mohapatra has handled portfolios for large-sized conglomerates like FPB, as well as startups in her diverse career. Working across sectors like FMCG, fashion, beauty, and personal care industries, and now healthcare, her journey has been nothing short of one big exhilarating ride. Formerly the CMO of FPB, she is now the marketing head at Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. Her portfolio at FPB was reportedly valued at 7,000 crore rupees. Her previous roles have seen her at Oriflame Cosmetics, where she was the brand and communications head, post being a category head in South Asia. She handled a portfolio of 800 crore rupees. Product management roles at Modicare Limited, Mary Kay Cosmetics, and Rich Quality Private Limited rounds up her extremely rich and extensively varied experience. Welcome, ma'am. We eagerly await your inputs on the theme of our panel.
Thank you so much for having me here today, guys. Lovely to see the co-panelists and lovely to see you on a beautiful day. Thank you so much.
So, in light of the transition that our world has to go through over the last year, our panel's theme of discussion for eSummit is Tales of Transition. The COVID-19, as has been the norm with other key global events prior to this, caused widespread change in the industry as we know it. Companies which learned to adapt and change in line with the world were able to cope up. Companies which realized what this changing world will need next exploded into something larger than ever envisioned. And companies which failed to do either, unfortunately, perished. Same scenario, different outcomes. Our panelists for the summit have been in the center of many, many transitions, including the present one. We are sure their tales will help us manage and use transitions as a launchpad in an ever-changing world. We hope our audience will take back comprehensive understanding of how to manage change and soar high during a transition. So please join us as we kick off the weekend for entrepreneurs by bringing to you a vehicle that lets you travel through change safe. In line with today's theme, I would like to begin this meet by requesting Murali sir to share his transition stories with us. We are aware that you were responsible in numerous transitions during your stint at Philips. For example, you always led impetus on providing integrated solutions rather than products with a sharp eye on the consumer's needs. So, sir, could you please share some of your experiences and learnings on how you handled such major transitions and substantial changes in your organization?
Fantastic. And thank you, Aditya. And a good morning. Good morning to some of the brightest entrepreneurial minds who are connected today. More than 250. A lot of you are young, and I presume I would be the oldest in this group. Okay. So pardon me if wisdom comes at the expense of being a bit outdated in terms of business models. Aditya, very well put. And over my past 30 years or 35 years, with being CEO, chairman, director for more than 25 years, leading enterprises regionally, globally, and beyond India, the other country where I've spent a large amount of time living is China. And I know China is not the flavor of the month. So one has seen it. Now, what I do is, with absolute respect to the time schedule and to listen to the brilliant co-panelists, I'm going to talk about instances where there are about 5 odd externally induced crises which I personally had the blessing and the privilege to navigate. It may come out beautifully, like I saw my crystal ball beautifully and gazed it so well. Let me be honest with you. One fell, one had bumps on the forehead, one has scars on the back, but one has learned a lot of lessons. So these are the 5 crises. In my career, spanning across both India and globally, I've also done 5 acquisitions, okay? Boutique small healthcare acquisitions in India, $20-30 million, to almost a scale of $500 million in Middle East, Saudi Arabia. And the reason I'm mentioning that, Aditya, is that every acquisition is like a crisis. It's a huge disruptor. And to the brilliant 250 plus entrepreneurial minds, whenever you're creating a value proposition, you always have a bit of an end game in mind that some big boy, big girl, big company will buy you out. So you need to be aware of the pains and the gains of mergers and acquisitions. And of course, when a crystal ball gaze 35 years back, of my life, I take pride in leading a Philips appliances business. It was about $1 billion. I doubled it to $2 billion. So much so that now I'm working with a range of global private equity players because Philips wants to demerge it. So let me pause here. And what I'm going to do is, the crises I went through, I'm just going to give you a teaser. And then I will request the finest brains here that if you want to probe further, keep it in your Q&A, okay? But my underlying message is, I've been a firm believer in Porter's 5 forces model. Anything you embark upon, it's not you and you alone. There are always customers and competitors. There are suppliers, there are ecosystem partners, there are people, and value creation happens within the pressure and the pull of those competitive forces. Michael Porter's that model for me has been evergreen for more than 3.5 decades. It's evergreen. Second lesson I've always learned is keep your focus. Do what you're exceptionally good at. There are times, entrepreneurs in this group, you'll get tempted to digress. You'll get tempted to get scared by doing more than what is beyond your normal realm of core competency. Do not fall for the temptation. Setting the clock back, late 90s, Asian financial crisis, Singapore dollar, Malaysian ringgit, Thai baht, Indonesian rupiah, Thai baht, all collapsed. I was launched, that was my first CEO job, okay? I have a great story there where that crisis was preceded by a huge amount of liquidity available in the system. So friends, sometimes, I love the stock market going up because my portfolio is doing well, but I get scared that when there's so much liquidity, a bubble or a collapse is not far away. So I was directly hands-on in that navigating my business through that Asian financial crisis, where I used the crisis to open the minds, streamline production footprint, go direct on distribution, but more important, competition which had indulged in excesses became vulnerable. They were into a paralysis mode, and that gave me an opportunity to ramp up my market share from 18% to 25% in ASEAN and double my profitability. If you want to probe further, I will leave it to you for your Q&A. My next crisis was in China when SARS happened, and a lot of us are now going through COVID. The beauty of China is SARS happened around Guangdong, Shenzhen. None of us were aware. It went out to Hong Kong, Singapore, Canada, then came back to China via international travelers. SARS China for me was a redefining moment where the government embarked upon scattered, fragmented point of sale for electrical building material items, congregated them into sleek, proper, hygienic market spaces. And SARS was the time when Alibaba was born, when digital was born. And you all know about Alibaba. Okay, it's such a huge, huge e-commerce player. I can share stories that I came out of SARS leading 3 legal entities where I was running on a 30-35% CAGR clocking growth. SARS actually helped big branded organized players to further consolidate, but it demanded a quick, nimble, proactive measures to be taken on distribution, etc. My third crisis was definitely in Middle East, where we had done a large acquisition of $500 million when the whole oil price collapsed. Saudi Arabia leadership changed, government becoming a 90% of your customer for construction and real estate dropped dramatically. And I'll admit, like a rabbit staring at a headlight, I and my team froze for 6 months, not knowing what to do. Because for 30 years, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was only clocking growth. But hindsight, post that crisis, we said you cannot depend upon government as a customer. You have to build your core competency to serve private, corporate, institutional customers, become better than competition, bring global offer, and today we are bounced back. The fourth big crisis for me was I was a part of Philips Lighting, a 7 billion euro market leader in the world, more than 125 years, a leader in lighting, whether it's architectural lighting, stadium lighting, whether it's street lighting, whether it's home lighting. And a lot of you have seen in the telecom space, in the fintech space, how technology is fast overtaking you. Well, I'll tell you what happens. A 125-year company dominating through a manufacturing footprint and technology on heat sink, mirror optics, physics, chemistry, whatever, digital comes in. And that's what, Aditya, you articulated. The transformation of the company from a product to solutions. The transformation of a company which believed that value creation meant going beyond selling a light fixture, but engaging the customer at a CXO level and changing their business. And I have great stories about Cofounder retail mall, large offices, stadiums. I mean, here also all the Varanasi and the Rashtrapati Bhavan is all the color changing lighting. But for me, the story here is when technology becomes disruptive, the biggest loser can be the market leader with a heritage of 80, 100 years. And nimble entrepreneurs like you can come quickly in. And yesterday I was in the board meeting of Bharat Forge, and we were talking about the e-vehicles. And this was the same story panning out. Okay, not just Tesla, but there are big guys there. So this transformation from analog to digital is another amazing story. Philips said, let's divest Philips Lighting. So it became Signify. Share price was listed at 20 bucks a share, 20 euro in Amsterdam Stock Exchange. In the worst time, it dropped to 18. Okay, today it's 37. It's almost doubled. And I'm talking about a 7 billion euro company. So again, friends, everywhere, big company, small company, you have to be entrepreneurial because the forces that attack you, the changes that happen is just unpredictable. My fifth one is what I'm experiencing with the largest forging company in the world, Bharat Forge, with the largest general insurance player, ICICI, Lombard General Insurance, how COVID and the crisis that COVID has posed is driving a phenomenal transformation. I mean, stock market prices came up and went up, but I can crystal ball gaze 3 years from now that these two market leaders, because of their entrepreneurial agility and nimbleness, will be amazing companies to watch. If you ask me questions on these two companies, I will be a bit reluctant because the session is being recorded and I am on the board, but you're most welcome to ask your questions. Aditya, I think I should pause here because my time has run out, because there are other beautiful lessons from acquisitions. But over to you.
Definitely, sir. Thank you very much for your insights. It's difficult to survive one. You've survived 5. That's telling a lot. Sir, coming to my next question, I want to understand that of late, we have seen a lot of impetus also from the government of India as well to promote entrepreneurship. So how do you compare the entrepreneurial ecosystem in India in comparison to other countries?
Look, I have lived and worked in China, as I said. I've lived and worked in Singapore. and don't get me wrong, entrepreneurism is also something in the blood and the DNA, not just of the individual, but even the country. I believe for an entrepreneur who has spotted a phenomenal opportunity, okay, as a first mover, and is working hard in getting investors and customers, frugally managing the cash flow, the government can do a hell of a lot more, a lot more in terms of the ease of doing business, in terms of enabling resources to be accessible a lot more in a competitive way. So I applaud the government, and I have seen how it operates in other countries. A lot more can be done. And if anyone in the Q&A wants to probe me further, you're most welcome.
Thank you, sir, for your insightful responses on those questions. I'd like to turn to Mythily, ma'am. Ma'am, apart from the various directorships that you hold, you are also the CEO and co-founder of NextWealth, which is now a thriving 12-year-old venture in IT, AIML, e-commerce, fintech, and other domains. For our viewers' benefit, I'd like to bring out that NextWealth has a vision of delivering AIML solutions to smaller towns and in turn create 10,000 jobs in small towns. So ma'am, having seen both corporate life and an entrepreneurial life, can you share what typically are the differences between both?
Okay, thanks, Utra. It's always, hard task to go after Murali, but let me make an attempt. Yeah, so having seen the corporate life part of it in Wipro, and then the entrepreneurship part twice, once when I was in Wipro as well as now in NextWealth, and to all the entrepreneurs here on this session who are there in this session, I think it's important to be, entrepreneurship looks like something with a golden halo around it. And like Murali said, you're just waiting to start something and then sell it off and exit and make money. But I think one has to be really aware about the differences that are there from a corporate life to an entrepreneur life. In a corporate life, market grows 20%, maybe you'll grow 25%, you might grow 10%. But in an entrepreneurship sort of a scenario, it is not those mild sawtooth, right? It's huge peaks and troughs. You may be off 100%, you may be off 200%. So you have to be really prepared for that. And that's where the nimbleness and agility that Murali talked about comes in. In a corporate life, your salary, your compensation or salary take home is more or less assured. But in an entrepreneur scenario, when you're just starting off, you're probably bootstrapped. You may not be able to take salary for the first 2 years, 3 years. So I have 3 people in my family who are entrepreneurs. So you can imagine that most of us are not taking home a salary for the last 3 years, right? So you have to be really prepared mentally for something like that, and definitely financially. In a corporate scenario, it's all about, I would say, crisis management. There is customers are shouting, deliveries are not happening, and you're managing crisis. But when you come to an entrepreneur scenario, it's challenges. There are challenges. It's not crisis of an ongoing business. It is challenges which get thrown at you every single day. And these are challenges with respect to people, with respect to products, with respect to customers, and so on. And last, I think for an entrepreneur, in a corporate life, your visiting card is everything, right? As an entrepreneur, you don't have a visiting card. Your name means nothing. So you have to build your brand. You have to leave your ego at home and do whatever is needed to make your business succeed. So these are just broad thoughts on what an entrepreneur needs to be prepared for. Apart from that golden halo that they have in mind, what are the ground realities that they have to be prepared for as compared to a corporate life? Over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. I think through that comparison, you've really given our audience kind of a toolkit for how to really prepare yourself for entrepreneurial life, like a 101 class. So thank you so much for that. But I'm interested because we did talk about corporate life versus an entrepreneurial life. And so that brings me to my next question, which is, you have been the CEO of a startup in Wipro called 01 Markets, where you built a successful business around e-procurement and reverse auctions in India. So I'm wondering, could you share some of your experience around this particular venture of yours, please?
Okay, sure. So that is many years back, but I found that the lessons from there remain the same. Those are evergreen, right? So this was around 2000, which was during the and this is about 20 years back, but that was the time of the .com boom and Y2K was happening. And that's when India actually started, the entrepreneur journey with many entrepreneurs, springing, especially in Bangalore. So in Wipro, we had actually formed a small team to start on this, to, leverage the .com boom. And what we started off was, because we are very familiar with hardware and computers and things like that, we started off as a business which would sell computers and services online. And this is a mistake most large organizations make. Whatever is their current business, they take it online, thinking that is a way to go digital, which is completely wrong, which is what we did. But the smart thing we did was to make it a combination of online and offline. So we had tied up with computer manufacturers, with dealers, with franchisees to provide the support, etc. And we had made some huge business plans saying that within 1 year, because we are coming with the Wipro brand, we're going to be, and those days 50 crores was a large value, we're going to be a 50 crores turnover in 1 year and so on. The first hump or obstacle we faced was when we are tied up with a very large online software company to provide the backend software for us. And we were ready to launch on August 15th. We were planning to launch in 4 different cities. All the plans was done. And this was July 20th, when we are supposed to start the UAT. And that vendor came back and said, we don't have a product. So I said, what have you been doing all this while? And we have been working with them for the last 3-4 months, defining specifications and all that, all that stuff. And all the lens was on Wipro, because Wipro is getting into a startup area during the .com time, and everybody was waiting for it. We had invited customers for the launch. Everything was done. But he came back and he said that we don't have a product. So what do you do then? So the first thing that we did was August 15th remains as a launch date, because we've invited customers. We have planned to launch in 4 cities, so that remains. So we worked backwards and said, what is it that we can launch as a version 1.0? And said that we will make that happen. So that was the first obstacle that happened. Second obstacle is, after we had launched, within 3 months, we realized this is going nowhere, because people are not used to coming online and buying. And we are talking about very, very early days, right? So they were not used to coming online and buying. So they would come online, see all this for curiosity's sake, and then go offline and buy. So 50 crores, we were hardly doing 50 lakhs of business. So that was the second obstacle that we faced. Then what really happened was that we came across this company which was into e-procurement and reverse auctions. It is not directly related to the online computer business, but sort of related to it. So we sort of pivoted quickly onto reverse auctions and e-procurement. And we were the pioneers. We built a platform. Within 1 month, we built a platform. We launched it. We started talking to customers who wanted to do auctions in terms of paints and chemicals, none of which we knew anything about. But we learned on the fly. We built the platform. We were able to execute the entire RFP process. And we were able to do about 200 crores of transactions, but revenue to us was much lower. But so this went on for about 3 years. In 3 years, there were few other people who came in, but we stayed on as the only reverse auctions company in the country at that point of time. And this was 3 years. We were making profits from year 1, small profits, but it was profit enough. But 3 years down the line, suddenly, because of the Y2K boom, Wipro became really big in the services business and the international business. And this seemed to be very small. So that's when Wipro said that let's combine it into a consulting business. So this small business was carved out and combined with the consulting business. But the story doesn't end there. 2 years later, which was after we had sort of combined it into the other business, and many of us had actually moved out. 2 years later, we got a request from HP for the entire platform that we had built, and they were willing to pay $50 million for it, right? But we had already exited. So the takeaways from this, which I want to leave on the table, is that first is from the learning from the first obstacle, backward scheduling. Whatever is the date, work backwards and launch a minimum value product. So backward scheduling, don't do forward scheduling, especially if you're an entrepreneur. Second is judge whether you're too early in the game. We were actually too early in the game at that point of time. So the timing has to be really right. And you have to judge that very, very clearly. Third is don't exit too early, because if you exit too late, there are too many competitors around. You exit too early, you've lost out on what you could have actually benefited from. Fourth is very important, and Murali touched upon it, is whatever your product you launch with, not necessarily that's the only thing that is going to succeed. So you have to pivot, and you have to pivot very quickly if you want to really take advantage of the market. Yeah, over to you, Uttara.
Thank you, ma'am. I think that your experience itself kind of demonstrated the being nimble and the agility that you spoke about just before that. So thank you for sharing that experience. And that kind of transitions into my next question, which was, how did NextWealth really counter the COVID situation last year? And therefore, what are your thoughts on the implications for the IT BPO sector?
Okay, so that is very close to my heart because it's so recent. So NextWealth, as you know, is a social entrepreneurship firm, social objective, but for profit. We do AI/ML data services from small towns. Okay, so we have about 2,500 people across these locations doing this work. So when the COVID situation hit last year in March, none of us were prepared for it, right? I think nobody was really anticipating that there would be a lockdown that would happen and things like that. But just before, I think lockdown was on March 25th, and March 22nd, I think I have a customer in Udaipur, by the way. A customer in Udaipur actually called me, and he said that Udaipur is Rajasthan, everything is being shut down and they are putting, locks on all the doors. Is that happening in Karnataka? So that my antenna went up, and I said, my God, this can happen in Karnataka or in Tamil Nadu in the south. So we need to be prepared. So overnight, within just 48 hours, without even knowing if that was going to be the situation, we moved all the people working from our centers to their homes, right? Which is a huge task in the sense they don't use laptops. So we used desktops had to be shifted home. They moved it on cycles, on rickshaws, on their heads and bikes and whatever, just made them move it home in 48 hours. And thankfully, previously we had tested out saying that whether USB tethering or mobile hotspot can work for some of the work that they are doing. And we knew that could work. So we moved everything home. And by that time, the lockdown was announced on March 25th. We took videos of how to install the desktops at home, because these people are, just imagine these people are in one room homes. They have a hall, they have a kitchen, and there is a toilet. That's it, because they're all from very small towns. And these are all people who are children of daily wage laborers, clerks, policemen, tailors, and people like that. So they live in very, very small homes. But they managed to shift it home, set it up, and by the time the lockdown was announced, 95% of our people were up and running, and we were continuing work for our customers without any disruption. So first thing is converting a crisis into an opportunity. How did we do that? So we had this particular customer who came back and said, he was caught on the wrong foot, saying that I have 1,000 people working from office, but I managed to reach only 200 people home. Can you help us? So here were we, first time ever working from home, and trying to manage the work that was there. But we managed to put in about 100 people for this client, and he was willing to pay a premium for us, and we did a pay-as-you-go model. So that was the first sort of an innovation or transformation that we did, and we realized that this is something that we can take to other customers. So what we did was we transformed all the processes at the back end to say that whereas earlier we would say I will give you 50 people within 5 weeks time, now we were giving 50 people in a 1 week time in a pay-as-you-go model where either could give a notice of 3 days. So first is converting a crisis into an opportunity. You have to see what that opportunity is in that crisis. Having done this and taken it to new customers, we acquired 9 new customers. And this year we are actually doubling our revenue. We are showing a 45% growth in terms of people and if COVID had not been there, trust me, we wouldn't have grown so much. So the first thing is converting a crisis into an opportunity. And second is what we talked about earlier, showing that agility to quickly change and adapt, right? And depending on what the situation is. Third is understanding what the customer wants at that point of time and giving him what he needs. The moment you're able to put yourself in the customer's shoes and understand what he wants, and change yourself or adapt yourself to give him what he wants, your business cannot fail. So that is the third thing. Fourth was, which was very important, is during this crisis, it was all about relentless execution and operations excellence. Execution and delivery, operations excellence is, I would say, quality is non-negotiable. Even if you lose out on business and volumes, this is non-negotiable. So because we ensured that, that customer actually grew to almost, is now 800, 900 people with us in a very, very short period of time. And the whole proof of the pudding is in what the customers say. So we measured it through a net promoter score or NPS score, which last year in COVID time is 72, one of the highest in the IT BPO industry. So therefore, I would say the fifth point would be employee first, especially during crisis time, customer next. Though normally we would say customer always first, during crisis time, employees first. Take care of your employees and automatically they will take care of your customers. So those are the 5 takeaways I wanted to give there. From an IT BPO sector perspective, I think because it is a work from anywhere model now, I think many of them are going to change the way work is going to get delivered. Their customers are going to understand this better. And I think they're going to see a lot of changes in the next 2 years. Over to you, Rahul. I hope I have not exceeded my time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. I think this was a clear demonstration on how foresight helps a company or an individual in times of crisis. I would like to move over to Prachi ma'am now. Ma'am, you had been associated with the Future Group for nearly 4.5 years. The Future Group in its prime was unarguably the leader of the Indian retail sector. The rapid pace of Future Group's growth was fueled by a string of well-planned and successful acquisitions. I would like to ask you, can you shed some light on how a large company like Future Group ideate, plan, and execute an acquisition activity?
First of all, thank you so much, Aditya, and thank you so much, all of you. Mythily was worried, what will she say after Murali said everything? I am now double worried, what am I going to say after both of them have presented their thoughts? I mean, there is nothing else I am going to add from what their superior knowledge has already not told you. Putting a direct question on the group, I think we have been, as a group, we had been very successful in acquiring a lot of mid-size and small size, as well as large size business. From a thought of what went in behind the planning of acquiring such brands, it was always looking at a synergy. I mean, if you see how the entire planning or how the acquisitions happened, it was always moving towards the idea that retail segment has to be expanded, and we were unarguably, as you said, the biggest retailer at that point of time, be it the number of stores or be it the number of channels or be it the number of doors that we were trying to speak out to. Moving out from the physical part of actually acquiring brands, the idea of the organization was also to move towards actually getting a huge footprints into the digital part of it. So the associations, the acquisitions always move towards that part. From an example of how we used to speak about fashion, I remember at one point of time we were looking forward to getting a huge association with Cooves. Why? I mean, everybody knows what were our physical footprints and the kind of service we used to give to our customers, and not only from a perspective of a large brand, from a perspective of looking local, hyper local, catchment specific requisitions. Why were we moving towards getting a footprint which is going to go ahead from what we are already acquiring or already achieving? I mean, look at let me give you a small example from what triggered these thoughts. I was on a trip to Bhubaneswar at one point of time, and I remember getting down and seeing one of the big bazaar having a huge, what we call as a hoarding or a facade on the store, which said "Pani ke bhav mein doodh." Now, as an Odia, the first thought that came to my mind is, why would somebody say "Pani ke bhav mein doodh" in Orissa? I mean, I would like to either read it in Odia or I might want to read it in English. the first thing which came into my mind is why not? Why isn't not in Odia? And mark my words, a few weeks back I was traveling to Trivandrum and I saw the same thing in Trivandrum. It did not click me. As a marketer, it did not click me. And I was thinking that how much we miss out as people who are on the other side of the line on small things, and the final point of touch point is the customer. At the end of the day, all of us are lined up to serve something which is called the pain point or the requisition or the need or even a happy thought of a customer. And this is something that triggers the thought from any perspective. So our acquisition have also been moved by this. When we started acquiring smaller business, like for example an Easy Day or a Nilgiris, the thought was also the same, that you reach out to the maximum number of customers and increase your footprints. Of course there is a business motive to it. I'm not going to go there because all of us are aware of how the business has to be synergistic, how the footprints has to increase, how the market share has to increase. But think about this, we are a huge brand and then we are acquiring smaller business to get the maximum inroads into the customer space. That's the primary thought that goes into, forget about us, future group as a group. I think any business which looks into it looks into it right now and also a long term perspective, and that's how the thought goes.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Your experience through all this from a marketing standpoint was clearly visible throughout this. Ma'am, I would like to understand now, in your current profession, what are the challenges that the pharmacy industry is facing, and how does Dr. Reddy's look at it?
Okay. I mean, if you ask me what are the challenges the pharmacy industry is facing at this point of time, I would say that it is in a very happy state at this point of time. I mean, not to take away from the fact that I came from an organization which has definitely seen the being on the receiving end of this entire COVID situation, and also at a space right now in the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks, which is at a booming stage of the COVID stage. So, how we look at it, Aditya, is not about whether it is a challenging state or is a happy state of the industry. What I see in my brief stint in this industry is the pipeline of innovation is very buzzing. It's a buzz, and rightfully so. It is a long journey circle of product development. I mean, kudos to the companies and the organizations which have actually come up with a vaccine in the past 1 year, within 1 year. Being in this space, being in the beauty and personal care sector also, I know for sure product development is not an easy space to work out, and getting the product right is at this speed is an amazing work. I mean, the kind of quantum of impetus a business puts us into through on a new product development and from a business case perspective is never easy. And for these organizations, for these brands, I think it's a huge development. From where we come, I have seen this industry absolutely staying on their toes of creating a new pipeline of product, looking at the futuristic approach, and not only looking at a trend right now, looking at an approach as to how things will change and what all can happen. Of course, there will be surprises like the COVID-19 coronavirus, but of course, then the foot to put would be stronger if the innovation pipeline is lit all the time, and that's how it is for this industry. So I don't think it's a challenging space for the industry to be in at this point of time. However, of course, I would say that apart from the a service that we are providing from a pharma industry, the regular challenges what Mythily was mentioning or what Murali was mentioning from an operational perspective, from a human being perspective, I think that stays true for all of us. And what I've seen is most of the pharma companies or the industry as a whole has pull up their socks and actually said that, okay, this is where we need to put our foot first, is to be a very, very employee friendly space. I mean, without that, I don't think what Mythily signed off as is the strongest statement I have found in the past 1 year, that if you don't take care of your employees, your people, there is no way your customer is going to get served.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much for your insight. Ma'am, I want to again understand from a merger and acquisition standpoint, how does a company correctly estimate the synergy between the companies, one that is getting acquired and one that is acquiring? And what characteristics do we need to look at to understand this perspective?
So again, from a business perspective, the maths will be done. My thought is from a larger point of view. What I have seen in the past 2-3 years, and also when we started acquiring companies, how we used to look at it. It's not right now. Right now, what you get is not always the movement ahead on a acquisition or a merger, for that matter. Also, what is it that you're looking at achieving in the next 5 years or even 10 years? A rolling plan of 5 years also doesn't stand true for most of the industries. Like, for example, in the current pharma industry also, it doesn't stand true unless and until you have a 10-year vision to where you are going to land up, or even further. I mean, an enduring business. I know most of us startup. I myself am associated with the startup, and I know how much pain we are going through. What Mythily has been mentioning, what Murali has been mentioning, we know exactly what goes through. But when an acquisition happens, it's not only always unidirectional movement of business and valuation. It's also a lot of synergy. As I put, it might be a tech support. I mean, you're acquiring a support of us. Look at us, we were a huge elephant physical company. When we would go ahead and acquire a tech support company or something which will give us the synergy in acquiring digital footprints or physical footprints or even digital footprints, that's our entire idea. I mean, synergy is not only unidirectional. It's not only the number of customers you are touching, or not only the number of doors you are going to open. It's how your organization is going to get shaped at one point of time. I remember I was speaking to somebody, a very senior executive in HT, and the point that he made was, we are not a media company. We are not a newspaper company. We are a content company. I mean, any space that we would be in, our idea is to drive content. It can be print, it can be online. It has to, at any point of time, evolve with what we are trying to achieve. And that's my idea of looking at any acquisition or any coming together of two business, that it should be 1 + 1 = 11, and that can be happening today or can happen 5 years or 10 years down the line.
Thank you, ma'am, for that perspective, and rather that combination of perspectives when looking at the synergy in an acquisition scenario. So after what has already been an extremely enlightening session so far, we do have a few more questions that we'd like to open up to the panel for discussion. The first of which being, how can startups be prepared to identify and grab new opportunities in emerging markets before the powerful incumbent players enter?
Should I go?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay. So I think 2-3 things that entrepreneurs should look at. One, of course, we have talked about the agility and the nimbleness part of it, right? And this is, when I say agility, I want to give an example here. In my earlier example I talked about how we were now recruiting 50 people in 1 week's time, right? Instead of 50 people in 5 weeks. Just last month, we changed the bar. We increased the height of the bar further. Now we did 300 people in 3 days. It's like, so in just 1 year, 50 people in 5 weeks to 50 people in 1 week to 300 people in just 3 days, because that's what the customer wanted. And then you go back and figure out how to make it happen. So first is being really agile and nimble. Okay. Second is what I call a SEAL, which is scan, evaluate, act, and learn. So you should be constantly scanning the horizon, looking for opportunities. And the moment the opportunity comes, you should be prepared. And not, in large organizations, in Wipro, we would want to have everything very clearly defined before we start, right? But we have to be prepared and, for the fact that not everything is going to be very clearly defined. You should be able to go with ambiguity, and you should be able to build on the go. You should be able to work out what is going to happen on the go, right? So you don't have to wait for everything to be even 90% perfect. You're 50% there, just go, just get started. So people have to live with ambiguity. So the scan, evaluate, act, and learn. So scan the horizon, look for opportunities, quickly evaluate, act, make mistakes, learn, and move ahead. And third is being able to connect the dots. You're being able to understand what does this particular situation mean for your organization and how can you adapt? I'll give a very simple example from an operational aspect. I don't know how many of you have read The Goal by Eliyahu Goldratt. I'm assuming some of you would have read it. So there is this person who's the head of the factory, and he's trying to balance the machines, balance the line, right? The assembly line. And there is always work which is getting stuck before some of the machines, and therefore it is not balanced. On the weekend, he takes his son and son's friends for a trek. And he finds that, while they're going for a trek, there are some people who are getting left behind. So then he immediately realized that there was one guy who was slightly slow and a fatter guy in the middle was holding up the line. And therefore, lot of people were getting left behind. He immediately made an analogy with his assembly line and realized that what has happened is this particular fat fellow in between, whose name was Herbie, that Herbie was actually stopping the balancing of the line. And he moved Herbie up to the front of the trek, and the entire line was balanced to the speed of Herbie, right? So it is the ability to be reading something somewhere else or thinking about some other industry or looking at what is happening in some other industry and seeing how you can adapt it to yourself. So one is agility. Second, I would say is the scan, evaluate, act, learn. And third is being able to connect the dots, quickly pick it up, work with ambiguity, implement, make mistakes, learn and go.
That's beautiful, Mythily. With the permission, I'll give a different perspective. I'm actually now investing in startups. So coming from the so-called corporate world, and I joined this firm called Venture Catalyst, Dr. Apurva Shah. And in a month, at least on 2 Saturdays, about 4 to 5 startups get pitched to prospective investors. I've invested in 4 of them. And let me share with you what I look for. One, I get attracted to an entrepreneur who is able to pitch to you a deep consumer insight, okay? Because deep down, that person feels passionately about a consumer need, okay? And then I often step back and ask, is this an unsolved problem? Is this a first mover there? Because I also have a lot of people who come and start pitching on e-mobility, battery, or aggregation for mobile players. It's a red ocean, it's a clutter. And I just stay away from there. So first thing for me is, how passionate is that entrepreneur about the deep consumer insight and unsolved problem of first mover? So that's one cluster. Second, I look into the eyes of that entrepreneur. And before he comes and seeks my money as a venture investor, has he already got 1 or 2 angel investors to back him or her? Because there are always angel investors who are passionate about health, about travel, about entertainment. So if he or she has already managed 1 or 2 well-known angel investors, then for me, there is a conviction that that entrepreneur has already vetted that idea with an industry expert. And that for me is beautiful. So that's number 2. Of course, I look at the pedigree of the entrepreneur. I mean, if the entrepreneur has already done some series of startups and spun them off, I know he or she has learned the lesson. That gives me confidence. But if it's a first-time entrepreneur, and like a lot of you are, then I see, look, what's the pedigree of this person? I mean, how passionate. I even look at academic background, academics background, in your MBAs, in your bachelors, what kind of leadership you displayed. Like some of you are anchoring Saksham. Tomorrow, if you come with a startup, I'll be looking into your eyes and say, look, this person has an ability to bring an idea, rally people, okay, and get it going. Then, and this is the 4th and the last one, which is a borrowed one. This is from Sanjeev Chandani, a founder of Naukri.com. And I had the pleasure with Mythily to hear him in an Isha session. And he mentioned something which for me is a 4th golden rule before I put my 8 to 10 lakhs in any startup or more. is that startup first going for customer money before they are seeking the investor money? There are people who put P&L. Investor, give me 50 lakhs, 1 crore, 3 crores, 5 crores. Hamara customer paisa dega. It'll come. No. I want a proof point that you've been able to monetize your value proposition through a customer, and now you're coming to an investor to scale it. Okay? Because investor money chases customer money. So just a few lessons.
I mean, again, Mythily, Murali have already put out many points. My points here and what I look up in startups, and I actually am one step down. I'm in accelerator stage. I'm still dabbling a lot of startups and still have one which I'm actively working on. So here's what I look at. In easy language, I first see if it is serving or solving any pain point of any customer. I mean, that's the first thing. Even if you are not creating a rocket, I don't care. I'm happy to see what is the pain point that you're serving or solving. Second, be very, very clear about your customer. I mean, either you're going to serve to Murali or Uttara or Aditya or Prachi, you have to be very clear who is it that you have to be speaking. I mean, you cannot serve all four of us. I like my coffee latte. Murali likes his Americano. So please be very clear what is it that you're going to say. Don't consider India as 1.34 billion people. Please segregate. It is something which is very, very clear that this is what I'm gunning for. This is what I'm running for. Your business case depends on that. Your business volume depends on that. So be very clear. I speak and work with a lot of venture capitalists like Murali, Mythily, and I know for the first thing that when I started working on my startup, my point is always I need to see a black and white business case as to top line kitna, bottom line kitna. And something that one of my ex-mentors said, Prachi, please just jump. Just jump, we'll figure it out. We have to do it. We cannot just keep on making business cases. And this is something that has really, really helped us. I mean, you really have to take the jump into the icy cold water and shiver and figure your way out, saying that, okay, this is what I am going to do. And one more thing is, which is what we can see as many trends of the industry as possible, as many failed, as many successful examples, as many me toos and not me toos. At the end of the day, it is what you make and what is it that you are saying. Your marketing story is also as big as your product story, is as big as your top line and bottom line, what is shows on Excel. So these are a few things which I really, really gun for when I think that a startup has to be not invested in, and how a startup should be pitched against a large company. I think we have our own space. I mean, at one point of time, I am a part of a fairly huge, large conglomerate. When I look at being a part of startups, I know how my personality is in a large space and how it is in a small space. A small space is, we are a team of 5. We can just sit at a barista or a CCD and figure our way out on a Saturday afternoon. And as a large conglomerate, yes, you have to. I work with 12 countries. I mean, getting all of the same countries, getting the country head, the marketing heads, the brand managers to look at one direction, it is a challenge. But definitely, it's a great challenge by itself. I mean, these are business experts. They need to move ahead to the next curve. While these are all, what I have in a startup is a group of enthusiastic people who believe in a common cause, and they need to move to the business part. So I think this is a beautiful time for startups. I mean, as Murali had also mentioned, a lot of support from government, a long way to go. A lot of industry and government organizations or bodies have to open up their minds to us also, as to how they look at us and figure their way out around us. A lot of vendor support. I mean, I have seen a lot of vendors actually opening up their minds and realizing this, that how they can combine 100x orders and make it one, so that it's easier. I mean, say for example, a fragrance. I might be making some different kind of fragrance mix. Somebody else is making some kind of fragrance mix, but a packaging material is a huge cost in an entire journey. So maybe they would want to see how they serve me as well as how they serve Uttara. So these are opening up of minds in the entire supply chain, which I see is a very positive state of being at this point in time.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. I would also like to understand from the panel, how should big organizations structure their business models with the fast-paced world and in today's ever-evolving landscape? What qualities should they inherit to tackle a threat like the COVID pandemic or say the bygone 2008 financial crisis?
Would you want to go first?
Murali, you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you. I am just amazed and impressed in how large companies, and I'm talking in the scale of the couple of boards I'm in, 10, 15,000 crores each, and even global, is how they have started realizing that change is so unpredictable. Technology is changing so rapidly. Value propositions which you thought were sacrosanct, okay, suddenly get challenged. That right-sizing, re-engineering, crystal ball gazing, it's not a one-off exercise. It's almost constantly embedded. And if I were to, for large companies which are global, what happens is they need to touch customers in many geographies, but they tend to centralize and aggregate innovation hub, supply hub. For them, they have to constantly make choices, okay, because they're structured to operate globally, but execute locally, okay. My lighting experience, it caught us on the back foot, but quickly we realized that you can't just with an architect or a specifier or an installer, you're going to be looking at improving productivity in an office space, improving shopping experience in a retail. And to do that, suddenly, Aditya, we realize that I may be 30,000 people global organization, but my product marketeers, my channel marketeers, my R&D people who have grown with me for 25, 30 years are not the ones who are going to carry me in this transition, okay? So sometimes you bolt on a niche M&A, but don't suffocate and kill them. That's what large companies do. But you actually start plugging in radically different people as catalysts into your leadership pool, okay? So this is how I have seen global, but again, I have to be a bit careful, but ICICI Lombard General Insurance and the inspiration they get from ICICI Bank or Bharat Forge, I find the leadership there, first of all, two traits in this leadership. One, the moment the crisis has happened, shut down a factory, demand has dropped, commercial vehicles, passenger vehicles, demand has dropped. The CEO, especially if he's an owner, okay, he immediately goes on cost reduction, protecting the cash flow, okay, and he doesn't waste time. कि अभी देखा जाएगा and all, doesn't waste time. Cash is sacrosanct. B, he immediately starts worrying that the business I built with passion over the past 10 years is vulnerable, is cyclical. I have to now, I cannot wait for this problem to go away because now I've seen the vulnerability of what I have built. Now I need to build new avenues of business. And the mind, I get amazed even with my 35 years of experience and I see this big entrepreneurial mind making those choices hard and soft, looking for collaboration. They spend 50% of the time looking out for partnership. I can go on and on, guys. I should stop. But all I'm telling is crises are making every organization, big or small, a learning organism, which is constantly evolving, developing antibodies, building itself for the next crisis.
I think beautifully put by Murali. He said a lot of the things that was there on my mind. But going back to what we talked about a little earlier, and the last point that Murali said was beautiful. Being a learning organism is a beautiful way to put it. First is, I think, the large organizations are like elephants, right? They need, and they have a lot of managers managing the way things are, have always been done. You need entrepreneurial managers in large organizations who think like entrepreneurs. And it's not easy because the organization's HR practices drive the way things are doing something well, the way it has always been done is what is rewarded. So you need entrepreneurial managers with entrepreneurial characteristics, which means that organizations should not be rewarding somebody who has done 25% growth when market is 15% growth. Of course, they can reward that person, but should be rewarding the real risk takers who are getting into something completely new and failing, right? So you have to reward risk takers. That's a message that needs to be sent by large organizations. Third is, and I want to give the example of sometimes, when it's a very large organization, it's very difficult to bring in this innovation or new practices into the existing way of doing business. So sometimes it may be worth it. Like, for example, in Wipro, we had a separate unit called the innovation unit, who think tank, which I was heading at one point of time, which actually had to come out with new ways of doing business and come out with at least 10 new service areas, which would translate into huge businesses 5 years down the line. And believe me, Mr. Premji would, review this on a quarterly basis. Whether he reviewed business or not, he would review me and what are the innovation services that we have brought in. And because of that, we brought in 12 innovation services areas. 3 succeeded, 9 failed, and we invested into that 9, which is fine. But the 3 that succeeded went on to become $500 million business in 5 years' time. So this is how I think large organizations really need to look at how to take and more so now, given the COVID crisis, I think they really need to look at the way they are doing business today and how to bring a newer way of doing things.
I mean, absolutely. There is this entire focus on learning is such a big part of handling any crisis. I mean, apart from learning, what you know and unlearn that is such a big part of it. I mean, just as I was speaking a few minutes back, for me to let go of my Excel sheet and see that green line was such a big risk for me to see that, okay, let me let go of it is something like a lifeline for me. I have never done it. On when I was given an independent project inside a set business to start as at a startup 5 years back or 6 years back, I mean, the first step that I took was that let me see how it is looking in black and white. I mean, unlearning those steps and then putting yourself out there saying that, okay, let me make space in my head, saying that there is not something new going to come up and I need to really look at it from this perspective. Risk takers is, I mean, it's easier said than done. We know when you put your money where your mouth is, that's when it hurts the most. And that's precisely where the entire buck stops. I mean, that's precisely where you would actually cross the line or not cross the line. As I said, I definitely believe a lot in what Mythily was mentioning. You really need to reward people who have the ability to reach 80% but make a huge impact on the innovation side of it or the new looking side of it, rather than actually putting impetus on that 100% target reaching mark. That's such a demotivator for the actual risk takers and the actual budding entrepreneurs in the system. I mean, we really have to go a long way as huge corporates. Also, we really have to go a long way in de-learning this entire process. At this point of time, we are still in the normal curve of PLM, wherein we are looking at doing the right kind of performance management. But at this point, and this is the time where this situation has taught us, let's completely look at it the other way. If nothing, this situation has taught us anything, it is to actually give a huge respect to people who can change immediately and make the change, also make an impact.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. The final question we have for the panel before we open up to audience Q&A is that the past 1 year has been challenging for all of us, as we've discussed, and especially for small businesses and startups. So we'd like to know, how is the startup ecosystem going to change in light of the COVID crisis? And what would be your message to entrepreneurs and recent startup founders who have had to kind of keep their spirits up and deal with the uncertain future that the last year has presented everyone.
Murali, waiting for you to go first.
No. Why doesn't Prachi go first this time, please?
I mean, as I said it, thank you, Murali, for that, for that opportunity. What do I tell the startups as to where they start? And I mean, this has been not a good situation for most of the startups, but there are so many success stories also when we are looking at it. There was, I think, one of the success stories which I got associated with or was exposed to was McAfee. Both the entrepreneurs are one of the entrepreneurs, a close friend, and he was mentioning this, that how the situation, and he was so almost embarrassed to say that they have grown 60% when we were actually meeting up. But it's about making a situation turn around also. First of all, I thought that we have seen them actually coming into the space a couple of years back. They were trying to put a radically different product into the market, but what this entire situation did for them, as per other digital natives, was primarily to, they were the fastest one to immediately make change, go and grab the market, while all of us, as I said, Future Group is one elephant when we entered into this situation. For us, it was a kuan khodo and then start looking for the water. For them, they were already there. So from there, they really knew how to propel from there. So for them, it was definitely a space where they knew how to propel and move ahead and make the mark. For us, it was looking for solution. I mean, some of us were nimble footed, could find the solution, were agile, and found solutions faster than others. Some of us were not so easy going to find solutions. So first of all, I think whenever a situation like this for any startup comes, you should know where to make the first dent. These are your cards. This is what you have, where you should know from here how to make the best of it. That's the first thing. Second thing which I thought for any startup to figure out in this situation again, is to find the right kind of support. If it is not possible to find avenues by yourself, find the right kind of support and association. I have seen a lot of startups come together and find solutions together also in the past 1 year. So these are the two biggest lessons the past 1 year and this crisis has taught from my perspective of working with a startup and seeing my close association with the other startups.
Happy to jump in, Mythily, with your permission.
Yes, please.
Building on Prachi's point, and again, for me, please, almost 300 plus sharp entrepreneurial mind in this audience. This is the golden time. This is the time. Trillions of dollars, humongous amount of liquidity is coming into the system, getting concentrated disproportionately in fewer hands. That's the nature of life. But chasing for good and bond interests are all dropping. Okay, equity PE multiples are bizarre. Okay, by any conventional mindset. So good ideas, good startups, there are funds waiting to come to you. That's number one. Number two, from a sheer demand perspective, this crisis has shaken up every large enterprise to shed off what you're not good at, outsource them, let somebody else do. Focus and concentrate your human resource, your monetary resource, your strategic mind into what you're exceptionally good at. So the next time a crisis comes, you're agile and nimble. So there's money coming in and there's huge amount of opportunities there. As Mythily spot on put it, her scan. Keep scanning, keep scanning. Then with you, entrepreneur, with you, and before I put a penny in your system, don't just jump on a running train. Arey, sab startup kar rahe hain, main bhi kar leta hu yaar. Yeah, my two batchmate friends have done something. Let me also jump with that. Sorry. Feel deep, passionate about it. This is what you will live and breathe. This is what you will, like Mythily, not take salary for the past 3 years. You are so committed, so much of a belief in it, that even your in-laws and parents and friends, you've rallied them to fund you. Because that conviction in yours is what an investor can see through. But more important, it's that which will make you come out of the clutter. And last but not the least, before you knock, there are angel investors, there are a lot of people waiting. Please remember that you are not God, okay? You're not a Superman or a Superwoman, okay? If you are exceptionally good at something, have the humility to get 2 or 3 like-minded people who complement you. If you're phenomenal in terms of networking and fund access, get someone for operational excellence. If the proposition is to dive deep into a consumer insight, it could be branded distribution. Seek out someone who brings that expertise, because many startups, and I'm also doing a lot of, not-for-profit, the founder just gets burnt up completely because he or she has not thought through. And today the investor can see through it. Huh? So even if it means, sir or madam, I need a bit more in my P&L, okay? Maybe instead of breaking even in 18 months, I'll break even in 24 months. But that's because I'm bringing this capability and capacity to make this idea blossom. I will sign my check and transfer the money left immediately. To you, Mythily.
Yeah. So, Murali put it beautifully. I think at this point of time, there are 2 choices. You either wait it out or do something different. If you're going to wait it out, you have to do all the things that Murali said. Tighten your belt, focus, cut off the riffraff, and really be a really lean organization. And this too shall pass. That is on the first option of waiting it out, but preparing yourself for the next crisis, or when the crisis goes, what do you do? Or when the crisis itself is there, convert it into an opportunity. What can you do different? What is the customer wanting during the time of the crisis? If you don't know, go to your best customer, your largest customer, the customer where you have the best relationship with, co-create something which is different. And that will actually turn out to be something big or a big business when the crisis actually lifts. So wait it out, tighten your belt, wait for it to pass, or do something different, do it along with your customer. Look at what the customer requires at that point of time during the crisis time and give it to him. And that's the way to change. Yeah.
Thank you so much to our panelists for sharing their thoughts with us on the questions we had. We'd now like to open it up and invite our audience to address their queries. So to the audience, I know we've got quite a few questions on the chat. So what I'd like to do is invite each audience member who has posted a question so far to actually ask the question directly to the panel. So beginning with Arun Kumar, if you would like to ask your question to the panel directly.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are.
So my question is about the social entrepreneurship. In my point of view, it is something which is led by cause, driven by innovation, ultimately leading to profit. So in this case, is it so important to choose a kind of investors who put forward the cause over the profit, and how picky we should be in that case?
Absolutely.
Choosing an investor.
Very nice question, because if the whole reason of you doing a social entrepreneurship firm is because you believe in that social cause, right? What Murali talked about, saying that you need to really be passionate about that cause, so the purpose for which you're doing it. So you believe in that cause, right? So even though you're an organization which is for profit, if there is a call at any point of time, the social objective takes precedence over the profit objective always. So if that is the case, you have to choose your investors very, very carefully. It is a marriage between your organization and the investor, right? So you have to choose the investor very carefully, who also believes in that social aspect of what you're doing, who believes in the social objective, who believes in the fact that you're going to give always precedence over the social, over the profit part of it, and therefore is actually encouraging you and supporting you in furthering that social cause. So therefore, it is very important to choose and there are many investors who are, impact investors today. Many funds are there which are who are there who don't look for, not necessarily looking at a return in terms of their investment. They're only looking at a return in terms of furthering that social cause. So it is very important to choose the investor very, very carefully. Ideally, I think it would be better to be bootstrapped in the beginning, build it to a certain level, and then when the investor sees that this is something that is really creating a social impact, then go with an investor to really expand.
Beautiful. I'm happy to just jump in. I am on 3 listed boards, and on 2, I'm in the CSR committee. Okay, 1, I'm also the chair. There are more than 20,000 crores of CSR money that is seeking out social investment, where the Ministry of Corporate Affairs is making some pretty demanding KPIs in terms of measuring the impact of that investment. I'm also part of a social venture partner where we are 200 partners or professionals like me, and they're building capability for about 30 odd non-NGOs, Anubhuti, Man, Pratham, and all that. Money does not come free. The world needs humongous amount of input from the haves to bring the have-nots in every aspect to come up, and they have that privilege and quality of life. So every penny spent, I'm realizing it fast, whether it's for-profit or not for-profit, for social impact, it has to be driven not by return on investment or cash flows or capital turn, but clearly, what is my impact? Is it literacy? Is it livelihood? Is it making a change to the differently abled? Accountability has to be there in any venture, any initiative. So when I also sign check for not just for my ATG, but beyond that, I will demand that social organization can prove to me that my contribution will have an impact. So impact is critical.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, ma'am, for your response to the question. We do have a couple of questions coming in from somebody whose username is Realme X. I'd like to invite them to let us know their real identity and then follow up with their questions, please. If you're not able to, I will be happy to read out the questions for you. So the first question is, how could India be self-sufficient in building APIs for the pharma industry? And the second is, how do you see the future of APO and BPO industries in the future, considering AI/ML? And can India be the biggest destination for IT outsourcing?
So Mythily, I'll take the first one. I think the second one is very clearly directed to you.
The first one is clearly directed towards you.
I keep quiet.
So real me X or real cross me. I mean, as Uttara said, we would really like to know your identity. So definitely looking forward to that. Now coming to your question, I mean, pharma industry, or for that matter, FMCG industry also at this point of time is at a juncture wherein we are seeing a lot of improvements on this side. I mean, A, these were not digital natives. B, we more than any other industry, they're not front-facing industry which has actually served any customer on the D2C segment. So for us to be able to come on this space and figure out our integrated API structure at this point of time, I think it's a huge space. To answer your question, are we going to be self-sufficient at any point of time right now is not the no. Yes, and it's happening. Most of us, I think, be it Abbott, be it us in DRL, or be it, I think, any other like Lupin, I think most of us are investing on it very strongly. And we are looking at partnering with small and big investors, big platforms also to reach an integrated space wherein we are going to be functioning far more smoothly in the D2C segment. So that's happening. But again, we were never a front-facing industry immediately. So it's a journey at this point of time. So, Mythily, over to you for the next
Yeah,
question.
thank you, Prachi. So the second part is basically, I think, how do you see the future of the KPO, BPO industry in future considering AI/ML? See, the what is happening in the market today, and all of you are very much aware, is data is a new oil, right? There is plethora of data, and especially during COVID time, I think there is so much of data which is there. Whether it is the what you see on Google, on YouTube, and there is data which is getting generated because of AI/ML technologies like blockchain, IoT, and so many other things that are happening. And organizations are also going through digital transformation. So when organizations go through digital transformation, they are actually wanting to deliver a better customer experience, but they have what is known as data scientists who actually look at that data, massage it so that it is something that using which they can deliver a better customer experience. But data scientists, when they work on data, require the data to be given to them in a consumable form, right? That is where the opportunity for KPO and BPO lies, where and data scientists do not want to do this work of making the data consumable. And when I say data, it is text, it is audio, it is video, it is voice, all of that, right? And there is so much of that happening today. And on top of that, in multiple languages. So as far as back office work, especially for data-based services is concerned, there is a huge opportunity. Just to give you an example, we are doing a work for one company in the US, which has got drones, drone aeroplanes, which actually take videos of the railroad tracks in Texas. And when there is any, nut coming loose, etc., it actually gives an alert and predicts it. So what we do is that after the automation is done, where there is a human touch required to validate that output of that algorithm, is where the KPO BPO opportunity is, right? Another example, large retail organizations like Amazon, Walmart, and so on have about 100 million to 200 million items in their catalog. And they're constantly, they're writing algorithms to compare their product and pricing with that of competition, because they need to be the cheapest online retailer and give the best prices. Product managers cannot decide prices on a daily basis when the products are running to millions. So you have algorithms which do it. But the output of the algorithm, when it compares one product with that of another competition product and says that you are lower in price, is it doing the right comparison? That's where the human touch comes in. So human touch comes in to say, yes, it has done the right comparison, or no, it has not done the right comparison. Give the feedback back to the algorithm so that it can correct itself. So it's a feedback loop. Again, opportunity for human touch. So high tech, high touch is the opportunity as far as KPO and BPO is concerned. And the data is not reducing in any way. It is only going to increase. And therefore, especially for India, I see huge opportunity in this space.
Post two experts, and I said I will not speak, but I'm tempted to. The other day I was in an advisory board, and one of the board members is a pretty noted ex-McKinsey consultant. And you learn so much, and I'm building on Mythily's point. And she told the board and the leadership, look, when it comes to data, when it comes to artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchains, etc., invariably you tend to look at optimizing your organization and maximizing the share of wallet and how you can serve the customers you're already touching. Okay, that's where the natural mind goes. She actually said, look, and this is back to Mythily's point, data is oil. Please look beyond that. Data is happening anywhere and everywhere, even though they're not your customers, even though they're not their ecosystem. So start putting big funnels, big mouths to just absorb them, okay? And from there, you keep synthesizing what is happening to your customer buying habits, usage habits, what is competition doing. So this whole data EIML, very much focused on what you're doing and streamlining and growing, but in your industry or space you're elected to operate, do that. ICICI Bank have come with an app. I'm amazed. They're opening that app to non-ICICI Bank users. So there would have been a time when you would have said, I want this as a competitive differentiation versus HDFC, Axis. ICICI Bank says, no, I've already done that. Now I want non-bank people to start using my app because I get data. From data, I will look at MSME, I will look at creditworthiness, I will look at ETs. Guys, entrepreneurs, KPOs, BPOs, I'm an old man, I'm much older than all of you, but you feel so vibrant when you look at what data is able to do now.
Just to add to that, Murali, very well said, just to give an example of, I'm also on the board of a bank where we are, what Murali said is absolutely true. So if you look at the customer spends and you do an analysis of the spends, you can make out where is the spend happening in terms of, let's say, a home loan or an education loan, and looking at the profile of the person. You can then, demographics of the person, you can then say, based on the spend habits, what should I be marketing to him versus somebody else? So the insights, analytics will drive insights will drive personalized selling, and therefore will have a larger conversion in terms of sales.
I'm sorry, just one example. Just 6 years back, I, with my leadership team, I'm in Suzhou, China, in the headquarters of Alibaba. Okay. Of course, now Alibaba is being controlled. Alibaba was the largest portal where, it's Amazon, it's Flipkart, it's everything put together. Okay, that's Alibaba. The Alipay was to enable the payment of the customers. Now you're having Google Pay, Amazon Pay. This happened 6-7 years back, Alipay. Then they started all your Swiggy, Zomato services, where they started giving personalized home delivery. Then they got on to the Ubers of the world, okay? And so here I'm sitting with the leadership of Alibaba, and we are launching high 10,000 RMB plus air purifier. And we wanted a targeted marketing, okay? And so we wanted to access pockets of super rich Chinese, okay, for whom health is primary. Alibaba said, no problem, man. With a combination of their Aadhaar number, okay, and their bank code, I have such a humongous database. And privacy law, there's nothing there. Such a humongous database. I can give you a data intelligence which will enable you to bring forward your super premium sale. But here is my check. These aggregators are becoming monsters, scary, but monsters.
Thank you all for your responses. I think that was a really, we found out that our speaker's name is Bharat, so I'm sure he's very happy with the response. I'd next like to invite Parthasarathy to ask his question.
Yeah. Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, all. My question is to Mythily, ma'am. Ma'am, you said like the startup, we should not exit too early, and I would like to know how can we assess the magnitude of the opportunity that we are having on the table, and what if there is a bigger opportunity, like it is right to exit at that point, like how can we assess that?
Yeah. So, Mike, in the context of what I said about exiting early was in the context of, I think, 0-1 markets. So we exited not by selling off the company, we got out of the business, right? And we got out of the business too early. Any entrepreneur, and I think Murali said this earlier, not only do you have to have a passion for the business, but you have to have patience and you have to have perseverance, right? All three are very, very important. And when I say patience and perseverance, it's not about doing only that and continuing to do only that. Of course, you have to pivot as you go along. But exiting is getting out of the business too early without really having put in what I would call your utmost in terms of patience or perseverance in making it work. That is the first point. Second point is the exiting part, exiting early in terms of selling off the organization itself. How do you assess the magnitude of the opportunity? And that is where I think the entrepreneurs, it's all good to have everything on paper and say that, oh, this is a market growth. This is where I see the business. This is what is happening. But this is where the entrepreneurs' instincts come in. And the ability of the entrepreneur to anticipate, to look around corners and to connect the dots. What do I mean by that? He should be able to anticipate, saying that, oh, this is an area which is going to boom in the next 1 or 2 years, and get into it. One, look around corners. He is able to, again, say similar, able to anticipate a crisis or a problem or an opportunity even if before it has happened. I'll give an example of my son. He actually got into blockchain area three and a half years back, and blockchain was completely new at that time, right? And he went in for the first, what they call as the ICO, similar to an IPO, but that's in the blockchain terminology. He was one of the first few people to do the ICO. 1.5 years later, there were government regulations which banned crypto, and nobody was even open to blockchain. And then COVID happened. Everybody's, mindset and energy went into something else. But look at what has happened in the last 6 months. Crypto is back. Blockchain as a technology is back. And he didn't exit 3.5 years back. He waited it out for 3 years. And in 3 years, I can tell you, sometimes he used to come and borrow 1,000 rupees from me. Right? That's how much he didn't have. So he didn't have money. He used to come and borrow, but he waited it out. And now he's got the funding. It's really booming. So he didn't exit at the point of time. So passion, patience, and perseverance is a must. At the same time, if another 1 or 2 years, and this is a judgment call that the entrepreneur has to take, it does not mean forever you're in that business and it is not working. If after 3 years, and I can tell you, in these 3 years, he's pivoted at least 8 times to do new things. So if you're onto one thing and in 3 years it has not worked, you must either get out or change, right? But definitely that patience and perseverance is a must, especially if you're passionate about that business.
It runs in the family genes. Wow.
Thank you, ma'am.
So we would like to thank you all for joining us today for this enriching conversation. In the interest of time, we would close the audience Q&A round. We'll be happy to take all your questions over the mail and pass it on to our panelists, and we hope they'll be able to they'll be able to answer you justifiably. And in closing, we'd like to ask all our esteemed panel one last question. If you had to suggest a single piece of advice to thrive in to our audience to thrive in this constantly evolving world, what would that be? We need one. We would request one input from each of our panelists.
Murali, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
No, Prachi. No, Prachi. I'm waiting for you.
One thing which I can say in front of all this, these two stalwarts is there is something that I keep my mind open, that keep on learning. I mean, and don't make yourself too comfortable in a space that you are. Don't go to an extremely uncomfortable space wherein you know you will fail. But yes, keep on learning, keep on pushing that barrier and say that, okay, this is something which I'm going to learn. Be comfortably uncomfortable for sure. That's something that I would advise every one of you to do.
Nice, Prachi, very well said. Okay, I would say that for entrepreneurs, many entrepreneurs come in to do a startup with stars in their eyes. You hear of success stories of other entrepreneurs who have made it big and have sold off, and you think that's where it is going to go. And many of these large entrepreneur organizations have made a success of it with huge revenues, but absolutely no bottom line or very negative bottom line. So I always feel, and I believe very strongly, that the fundamentals of doing business do not go away, whether you're a large organization or whether you're a startup or an entrepreneur. If you start with that premise, saying that as an entrepreneur, I'm building an organization which has to be profitable, but has to bring in revenues, you cannot go wrong. Don't be dependent on building a huge revenue base with no bottom line. So the fundamentals of doing business, all the things that go with making profit, ensuring revenues, managing your customers well, managing your expenses well, that doesn't go away. So please ensure whatever you start up that you focus on that.
Wow. With this pearls of wisdom, I all I can share is something the other day I was telling my wife, where she said, "Look, Murali, now it's time to relax." I says, "No, I just hope a bit like dust thou art to dust returnest. Till you hit the dust, the tombstone or whatever. I hope every day," and I'm building on Prachi's point, you keep learning. You keep learning and you keep growing. So for me, if all of us here, whether you're young, not so young, okay, every morning, half an hour, and I hope all of you take that half an hour for yourself in a walk, in a meditation, etc. A certain time, just ask yourself that, am I building or investing in myself to be relevant tomorrow? Okay. And this could be a great job, a beautiful investment, okay, growing or having a social impact, or even making a change to your family. And that is the essence. Because end of the day, the power of what we have as a human mind and the belief in oneself is so huge. And till the dust meets the dust, there's so much to learn and grow.
Can I have 2 minutes? Just last week, I had a session with the Cognizant senior management team on entrepreneurship. What are the qualities that you need to look for in an entrepreneur? So I had written down something, I'd written down 10 points, which is the 10 commandments. And can I just read that out? Okay, so just quickly. So first is that we talked a lot about this. Passion, patience, perseverance. And the perseverance part, I wanted to tell the story of ant, but I'm not going to talk about it now, but this is the first one. Second is SEAL, which is can, evaluate, act, and learn. Ideas can come from anywhere. Third is that, and this is my favorite, is an entrepreneur has to have the Garuda view and the snake view, which is he should have the 30,000 feet view, which is strategic, but he should know what is happening on the ground, which is the snake view. That is the third. Fourth is, and I already talked about it, ability to anticipate and look around corners. Very important. Fifth is, whatever you do, apart from the passion, you should have a purpose for which you're doing, and you should believe in that purpose. So purpose, ambition, vision. Purpose will make people stay with you. Ambition and vision will inspire them to stay with you. So that is a fifth point. Sixth point is build your brand. You have to market yourself. Your card and your name means nothing. You have to build your brand. Seventh is leave your ego at home. You have to be the coffee boy or coffee girl to the CEO. If you have to clean the bathrooms, you have to clean the bathrooms. So leave your ego at home. So that's the seventh point. Eighth point is all about people, people, people. Choose the right partners, choose the right people in your organization, and work with them with your head, heart, and hands. And I believe very strongly on this. Ninth point, which I talked about, is the fundamentals of doing business do not go away. And last was, which both Prachi and Murali have talked about, is be relevant, be a learning. You should be like a sponge and absorbing all the knowledge which is out there. And that's the last point.
Wow. After Moses, it's the 10 commandments of Mythily now.
Amazingly summed up.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you.
That was really great from all our panelists, and I'm sure the audience made a note of these pearls of wisdom as well. So we'd really like to thank our panelists, Mr. Murali Sivaraman, Ms. Mythily Ramesh, and Ms. Prachi Mohapatra for taking the time to speak with us today. I think we have all gained some valuable insights from this conversation, and we really hope to connect with you for more collaborations in the future.
Sure. Thank you, Aditya.
Yes.
And thank you, Uttara.
All the very best to all of
Thank
you.
you, Prachi and Murali online.
Thank you. And dare
Thank
to
you
dream,
so
all
much.
of you.
Yeah.
The world is yours.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Hi.
Ma'am, we would request, yes, ma'am. We would request all our speakers to please hold back for a couple of minutes as we wrap the session up. We would also like to thank our sponsors, Secure Meters, Rajasthan Venture Capital Fund, TIE Udaipur, Amazon Web Services, Your Story, Udaipur Blog, InstaMojo, IIM Udaipur Incubation Center, Startup FYI, Lab in Motion, Hostel Fund, Venture Capitalists, Venture Catalysts, Succeed, Samayat Capital, Head Start. On behalf of Team Saksham, thank you once again to the audience and have a great day. You all have been a lovely audience.
Aditya Nutra, 3 cheers.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. The audience can leave the meeting if they wish to.
We join the breakout room. Okay.